Hello, and today we're going to look at Symbaroum, which is a game that's currently actually on Kickstarter, so you could actually play this setting in the 5th edition rules. However, what we're looking at today is the original rule set, and in particular the starter set, Treasure Hunts in Davokar. Now, the original setting is a very dark, sort of almost gothic, Warhammer fantasy or Witcher style, grim, fairy tale setting. And basically the people of Ambria have moved into the region of Davokar, which is where there's this giant ancient forest. And there are some native people that they've defeated, which are the barbarians. And there's also the elves of the forest. Now, the elves of the forest are not very friendly. They really don't like humans. So they've created this thing called the Iron Pact, where they've tried to stop humans penetrating the forest. And the reason for that is there's a dark secret that kind of lays on the forest, and the elves are trying to protect it from people uncovering it and releasing it back into the world. Now, the human settlement that's closest to Davokar is Thistlehold, and that's what's in this set here. And this setting also has an interesting concept of corruption. So it's a really interesting dark fantasy world, and this product is a great way to get a good taster. And rather than the 260 odd page hardback, which is the main core book, instead you're going to get two little booklets of about 64 pages each. So we've got an easy to learn rule set with a cut down version of the rules, so you're not going to get all the character classes, and then a 64 page adventure compendium which includes 2 adventures and a bit more information for the person running the game. You're going to get some bright Davokar dice set, and then we're going to get a couple of maps and some pre-generated characters. Now, apparently it's 6 character sheets with 5 ready-made characters and a mystical companion. So yeah, it's very weird. So the Ashurani dynasty was as short-lived as it was cruel, known for its insights into the light and the darkness. Key to their power was an artifact known as the Rod of Light and Darkness. Its touch could breathe life into dead things and steal it away from that which lived. And guess what? The Rod's current whereabouts have been revealed. So gives you an idea of what you're going to be doing potentially in some of the adventures. So it's a nice quality box. So there you go. So you've got a couple of bags of silica gel, apparently, a games catalogue, the bright Davokar dice. Now, there is a concept of the bright and the dark Davokar. The bright is the safer part of the forest, and the dark is the really grim place. So here are the weird sort of character sheets. So this is basically pre-generated. And at the top, you've got things like the player, the name, the race, some derived abilities, your main abilities, including your various skills. So you've got accurate, cunning, discreet, persuasive, quick, resolute, strong, vigilant. And they generate your toughness, your pain threshold, your corruption, and your corruption threshold. And then you've got your various abilities underneath. So, for example, this person here is a wizard, so they've got long-lived, lore-master, wizardry, and ritualist. So they're sort of like your skills, for want of a better word. So there's 6 of those. They're a slightly weird glossy paper. Hold on, let's take this. It's going to be the easiest way to get it all out. So we've got 6 of those, and I believe you can download those online as well. Then we've got a nice map of Thistlehold. North is nicely at the top, and just on the edge here you can see the start of the forest. Then on the back there is a sort of a map of the world. So here is Thistlehold. Capital is Yandaros, and then obviously you get the depths of the forest going all the way to the north, many leagues. We've then got sort of like a dark, dank, grim forest, and what's slightly annoying is north is sort of up this way, but when you actually fold out the map, it's not your normal north is to the short, the long edge. It goes up to the short edge, and it's very dark and grim, and there's a funky sort of tower on the back, which I believe is part of the adventures, so I won't show you that, not to spoil it for people who don't like that. So we've got our 2 books, the starter rules, the settings and adventure, and there's lots of really nice artwork in here. Now this is a version 1 of the rules, so it's possible it might get updated by the time you order yourself a copy. And as you can see here, for me, this is very sort of Elric, Stormbringer sort of style for me, with the white hair, but it's a really dark, grim set of sort of pastely, rough sketch style artwork, which I believe is going to be also used for the Lord of the Rings by the same publisher. Now, what's interesting about this set of rules is it's by Free League, but it's not actually the standard rule set they use. It's a sort of roll low on a D20 rule set. So anyway, there you go. So we've got Welcome to Symbaroum with a little example of play. We've then got a bit about Symbaroum, about role-playing games, explaining the dice with some tips and guidance. We then get a nice little setting information here, so a couple of pages on that. So obviously the humans of Ambria, the forest of Davokar, in both its bright and dark. It talks a little bit about an explorer's license, because I believe you actually need to get a license to go in to the forest. Then there's our other factions. So you've got the Queen and her nobles, which are part of the Ambrians, but you've also got the barbarian clans who were defeated by the Queen. We've then got the Church and the Ordo Magica. We've got a little bit of information about the Iron Pact, which is the deal that the Elves waged with the humans. And then we get into player characters. So what is the role of the player? So obviously you want a goal for your character. You've got to describe your character and set up scenes and develop your character and describe your plans. It then goes into tests. So you've got your attributes, and they're rated from 5 to 15, giving you a +5 to -5 modifier. And because it's a roll low game engine, a high value of 15 gives you a -5, so you're more likely to roll low. So it talks about a test in here, and then goes to attributes. Now I believe most tests are rolled against your attributes, but then your abilities can tweak that. Haven't had a chance to read all the rules quite yet, because I'm partly waiting for the full rule book to come along, to be honest. Anyway, let's talk about attributes. So you've got accurate, so your hand-eye coordination, your cunning, so your wit and your knowledge, your discretion, or discreet as it's called, how silent and agile are you, your persuasiveness, so are you going to influence people via voice and body language, your quickness, which is your reflexes, balance, nimbleness, so discreet and quick are sort of like dexterity, I guess. Your resolute, which is your resistance to influence, whether that's social pressure or magic, how strong you are, and how vigilant you are, so how aware are you of things. Now once you've got your attributes all sorted out, which are handled via a point buy system, you then do your secondary attributes, so how tough you are, what your pain threshold is, both of those are based off your strong, your defense, which is based off your quick, and your corruption threshold, which is based off your resolute. You've then got a cut down selection of classes, so you've got warrior, hunter, and a warrior could be a knight and a hunter could be a witch hunter, for example. You've then got your mystic, so you've got a theurg, which I believe is effectively a priest, and then your wizard, so casting spells and stuff like that. And it talks about appropriate abilities and important attributes and suggested races, because there are more than humans in this setting. You've then got a rogue, and the subclass for that is treasure hunter. Now, you've only got what's known as novice and adept levels in this book, but the core rulebook apparently lets you go up to master levels, and there's a little bit here telling you about that. You've then got your abilities, which are effectively skills. So, for example, acrobatics. The player character has learned the art of acrobatic manoeuvring, having spent time with a theatre company, or a fencing school, or climbing trees. The nimbleness of the acrobat provides an advantage when trying to withdraw from close combat or when quickly wanting to reach the centre of an enemy formation. So, as a novice, your reaction is you can roll against your quick to avoid a free attack from enemies in melee when you're trying to slip away or basically get in amongst them. And at adept level, you get free. If the character is knocked down, they may attempt to jump back up again as a free action. So we then got other ones. I'm not going to go through all of them, but alchemy, beast law, man at arms, marksman, ritualist, steel throw, two-handed force, wizardry, witchcraft, or witch sight, sorry, not witchcraft. Anyway, nice piece of artwork here of a mounted sort of knight character. And here I'm just going to talk about race and traits. So you've got the humans of Ambria, and there's also humans of the barbarians as well. You've got the goblins and the ogre. Now this is a bit different. You know, a lot of settings, you know, you can be an elf or a dwarf. Well, not in this setting. You're kind of goblins or ogres. Now, goblins are mischievous little things, very much inspired by the sort of original fairy tale, and they're short-lived and pariah, and they tend to have the survival instinct as well. So it's recommending the traits that you either should have or must have. And then it's got things about goblin names, so Alfbolg, Tengul, Tulga. So yeah, there you go. So we then got a bit about traits. So for example, pariah. The player character belongs to a race which is ill-reputed among the ruling majority and is more or less openly discriminated against. So goblins are very much a secondary class other who is treated with contempt or outright suspicion. We then got some traditions and powers, which is to do with like magic. So we've got theurgy, which is basically your spells for sort of spiritual magic, and then wizardry, which is your more classical sorcery. And I believe there are different schools of magic in the Ordo Magica. Then we've got the various mystical powers. So you've got Confusion, Holy Aura, Lay on Hands, Flaming Servant, and there's obviously more in the main rule book. As I say, I believe this is very much a cut down sampler of the main rules. We then got a big section on the combat rules, page 40 this is, and that goes on all the way to 45, where we've then got a quick guide for what you can do. So you've got initiative, then you've got your move and combat actions, you then have your defense and your damage. Now, one of the things that this rule set does, which is something I've seen in a few rules now, is that the players are the people who roll dice. You don't roll dice as the person running the game. You know, if someone wants to avoid being hit, they roll their defense rather than the referee rolling to hit. We then got a little bit about other rules, so keeping time, problem solving, social challenges, and shadow and corruption, which is very important because corruption is sort of the built-in nastiness that exists within everything that can be drawn out by doing things. So, for example, if you cast spells, then you potentially can corrupt yourself. So, since mystics bend and warp nature according to their will, they are constantly threatened by corruption. Now, that's very sort of Warhammer, chaosy sort of stuff, and I really like that. Now, obviously, if you push your luck too much with casting spells, you're going to build up corruption and eventually become an abomination. So it talks about that down here. So degree of taint, blight-stricken, blight-marked, and abomination. So if you're blight-stricken, that can be detected by witch sight and holy smoke rituals. If you're blight-marked, you've got a physical stigma, which basically is a physical manifestation of your corruption. And then abomination, the player character turns into an abomination, becomes an NPC. No known ritual can save the character. Now, obviously, in your campaign, maybe you might be able to do that. But what I like about that is this is very much a sort of Tolkien, orcs of corrupted elves sort of mechanic. So I could see this working actually really well as a Lord of the Rings rule set. But obviously, Free League have their own second edition Lord of the Rings coming out. So we will see what ends up there. We've got a final bit about experience here, and then we go into a big thing about equipment. And it talks about the currency. So you've got an Orteg, which I guess is a gold piece, and we've then got the other way around. The thaler is the gold piece, the shilling is like the silver piece, when there's 10 of those to a thaler, and then the Orteg is like the copper piece, where there's 100 of those to each thaler. So, yeah, I guess it's a 10-10-10 thing. So 1 thaler is 10 shillings, 10 ortegs is 1 shilling, so 100 to a thaler. So there you go. Yeah, okay. Interesting. And I do wonder if that's a misprint, whether it's meant to be 100 ortegs to a shilling. I have to check for that on an online FAQ. We then got our weapons, which have various dice. So obviously, the bigger the dice, the more damage it does. So a heavy weapon does 1d10, a long weapon does 1d8. And then armour similarly has a dice for protection. So light armour has 1d4, heavy armour 1d8. So that's interesting. And then weapons and armour can also have a quality, so they can be flexible, balanced, blunt, cumbersome, impeding, jointed, long, precise, short. You can also buy goods and services. Then you've got your standard equipment, so lamp, oil, pocket mirror, rope ladder, all your standard sort of RPG stuff. There's a nice bit about simple garb, artisan's garb, burger's garb, and noble's garb, and boots and bits and pieces like that. You've also got a little bit about mystical artifacts, and then a nice little bit talking about pre-made characters. So, for example, if you want to be Hador, so born after the end of the Great War, you have lived your whole life in the slowly dying land of Albertar, moving further and further north in the hunt for fertile soil and fresh water. With your father and older siblings dead, it was up to you to feed yourself and your sickly mother, something you managed by hunting prey on the estates of already migrated nobles. When your mother perished a couple of years ago, her confessor took you in. This was not purely an act of kindness. The Theorg was also after your hunting skills to combat the growing threat from undead and resurfacing cultists in the area. Finally, the situation grew unmanageable, and the two of you decided to join the wave of refugees heading north. Needless to say, learning that the powers of the Eternal Night are also spreading in the Promised Land was something of a blow. Both you and your spiritual teacher immediately vowed to do whatever you could do to stop Ambria from meeting the same fate as the realm you left behind. So that's a nice little bit of background information to set up your character. And then, based on that, you've then got a personal goal. Now, interestingly, this is a nice little bit. In truth, you don't care anything about understanding darkness. You already understand it well enough. It is evil, and it must be rooted out and destroyed. And there's also a little bit of tension with your mentor, because it says, they don't really pay attention. Maybe some of your new acquaintances are of a different mindset. So you've got a nice bit of background, and then sort of what you want to do, and a little bit of tension with one of the other players, but also why you're looking forward to the other players. It then talks about how the character sheet breaks down, so your occupation, which is on page 20, your attribute, page 19, your race, page 31, your abilities and powers, page 25 and 38, stuff about your shadow, which is on page 48, money and equipment, page 51, personality and background, obviously you make that up, friends and companions, artifacts, and this is a space to draw your portrait. So, yeah, nice little introduction booklet for players there. And as you can see, it's got nice artwork, it's got nice glossy colour pages, and yeah, very impressed with that. We've then got book 2, sort of your DM's guide. This is also version 1. Got some more of that lovely artwork. So, what's the role of the game master? What you should do before a session, during a session. A say yes idea is in here, where you tend to say yes and try not to say no. What to do after a session. A little bit of background about Thistle Hold, with some nice evocative artwork again, including this nice tree house here. A key to the map. Yeah. Then we've got expeditions with this lovely giant head sculpture with a tiny little person next to it. So travelling, moving, food, orientating yourself. You could last a little bit of a hex crawl map. Treasure. Some monsters and abominations. So Blightborn, and Beast, Meerkat, Abor. Cultural beings. So village warrior. Early summoner elf, a rage troll, a draggle. Where the Darkness Dwells is an adventure, so we're not going to look at that too much, so we don't spoil it too much. The Gathering Storm is a second adventure. Some nice artwork there. Then, right at the back, more information with the huge product line that is Symbaroum, and it's won multiple awards. other stuff that they've published, and no summary stuff on the back, which is a bit of a missed opportunity, and no screen, which I don't know, if you're into screens, that's a bit of a shame. So yeah, this is a really good little product. It harks back to the starter sets of sort of the 80s for D&D and Cthulhu and all those other great games that came out in the 80s, and it's really good to see that modern companies are starting to bring back the box set, and Free League have really been quite good at doing that. Dice, I'm not so keen on the swirly dice. These are actually not bad, but I tend to find often swirly dice make the numbers hard to read. But on these ones, they're pretty good. So they feel a little bit light, but they're perfectly pleasant, reasonable dice. Not bad for coming in with a box set, and pretty much gives you everything you need to go. So with the fairly simple rules of like roll under your stat with a modifier for difficulty, and I think that's pretty good. I say roll under your stat, roll under a target number, and then use the modifier from your stat. So yeah, that's pretty good. One thing I would think about doing is maybe on your character sheet put in brackets the plus or minus 1 to 5. So you're not having to look stuff up. But yeah, overall I'm pretty impressed with this product, and it makes me quite excited to have a really good read from cover to cover of both of these books and try and get my players to have a run through the adventures. And with the 2 adventures built into this box set, you've got hours of fun straight out the box, and I think there is enough here for you to go off and actually create your own adventures within this setting. Now, I believe I do have a PDF of the full rulebook already, so I'm just waiting for the full rulebook to turn up. So I'll probably revisit the Dark Depths of Davokar at a later date. But I wanted to get this video out while the Kickstarter is still running, just so you can see sort of the production quality of Free League, and also give you a little bit of an idea of what it's about. So, it's this dark, gothic, corrupting force, and you are brave pioneers on the frontiers of civilization, penetrating into the wilderness. So in many ways it's a little bit of a vibe of Forbidden Lands, but a much more dark, gothic, Grimm's fairy tales setting, a bit more like Vaesen, I believe it is their other game. So yeah, it's a really nice, dark, gritty fantasy setting, and if that's your thing, I think you're going to really love Symbaroum. Anyway, I think that's enough for today. So until the next video, happy gaming.